out there on YouTube, my fellow 3D printer enthusiasts. Today I'd like to do a review of the Tronxy X3s 3D printer. So let's just jump right in and we'll talk about the negatives and the positives. So first negative. For me, the first negative was the firmware. I've had a few issues with the firmware. The first is the EEPROM is locked. You cannot save any settings. And there is an offset on the x-axis of 22 millimeters, so keep that in mind. Second issue with the firmware for me was that if I stopped the print mid-print for whatever reason and I wanted to rehome the printer, only two axes would home. And for me to get the printer to home correctly, I would actually have to reach around back and turn the power off and on. Then it would rehome correctly. Third issue with the firmware for me, and I'm not sure if it's the control panel or the firmware itself, but if I wanted to do any, if I wanted to change any settings, say with the temperature or whatnot, I found that it was very touchy. If you turned it very slow, you're fine, but if you wanted to turn it at a reasonable speed to get up to your temperature that you want, you'll blow right past that, you'll hit the maximum. Or the reverse, you'll go right past the temperature you want to go down to and you'll hit 0. So it's very touchy, I found, and I found it very annoying to deal with. So those are the issues with the firmware. The next issue for me was the power supply is only 240 watts, 20 amp, and you have a 330 by 330 heated build plate on this printer, and I don't think that power supply is big enough for that. Also at 12 volts, this heated bed takes a considerable amount of time to heat up. Without the corking on here, I was getting above 20 minutes for the bed to get up to 60 degrees. With the corking, I'm still getting 13 to 14 minutes just to get to 60 degrees. I haven't even tried to get this bed to 90 degrees yet, as it would take forever, if even possible. So that's a big issue for me as well. The next issue I have, and it's a little bit in the design, this gantry design here works okay for the original X3 because it's a much smaller frame, but on this bigger frame you just have a lot of issues here with the gantry staying parallel to the bed, because the way the gantry is set up, the wheels being on the front and the back don't apply any pressure on the towers to keep the gantry level. If they were to take this assembly and turn it 90 degrees so that the wheels were hitting on the sides, it would take a lot of the responsibility off the threaded rods and put it on the tower assemblies. But given that this is the way the design is, you're going to have these threaded rods, especially given the size of this frame, like 100% perfectly aligned with one another. And even then, at times, you're going to get slight bonding on this threaded rod over here, which I still do every now and then. And it's a real pain in the ass. And I mean, you have to get everything perfectly straight and aligned to one another, or else the bottom 4 inches here on your left side threaded rod, you're going to get a lot of binding. So that's another issue for me as well. The next issue I have with this printer, and I don't have this issue with any other printer, so I know it is this printer. After every print that I do, I have to re-level this bed before I do my next print, or else it won't work. Either it's too high or it's too low and it's banging into the bed. There could be a dozen different issues there that are a factor in that, and really right now I've tried to problem solve a few of them, but really right now I am to the point where I don't want to really solve any more of them. But after every one of these prints, and some of these were back-to-back prints, the gold ones here, for example, were all back-to-back prints, I had to re-level the bed after every print, or it wouldn't work. And that was a lot of fine-tuning as I was starting my first layer as well. I don't have that issue with any other printer I have. I can print a dozen times on the CR10 and I don't have to worry about leveling the bed. I pop my print off, I print again. Every modification on this printer was printed on my CR10, one right after the other. No re-leveling of the bed there. Same with my original X3, I don't have to worry about re-leveling the bed. My ANET A8, I don't have to worry about re-leveling the bed, or my E10. This is the only printer I've ever had that I had to re-level the bed after every print. So those are my negatives for the printer. I didn't get any real serious quality control issues out of the box in the kit. These two printed parts here and here, I did reprint, as the original ones weren't perfectly square, and the infill in them was very low, and my screws actually split the back. Those were one of the issues that I actually came across and resolved when figuring out my issues with my threaded rods. So other than that, I didn't really have any quality control issues with the printer. Now, let's go on to the positives. It is a huge build area for what you're going to pay for it. It is 330 by 330 by 400, and you can go a little bigger than that. The firmware allows movement on the Y and X axis, both up to 355 millimeters. I have a 350 millimeter by 350 millimeter mirror on here, and I can print the full size of this mirror if I chose to, thanks to the firmware and the fact that I do have that much play on both axes. So it is a fairly big print area. It's an all metal frame, and you do get two threaded rods, but they do have their issues. As I said, you have to make sure they're perfectly aligned. You do have your dual 2020 under your bed, so your bed is very stable on this printer. You don't have to worry about doing any modifications because you have a wobbly bed. There's no eccentric nuts on here, so if you're looking for something like that, that's not on this printer. There's plenty. I found sometimes when I get a printer, I don't have the wiring is just barely enough, especially on the gantry where it moves. But on this printer, the wiring was plenty, more than enough. I had more than enough wire to cover that 400 millimeter height, plus put a cable chain on here. So there was plenty of wiring to go with this printer. Putting the printer together was fairly easy. The manual was fairly straightforward, and I had no issues there with putting the printer together. It is an open build construction, so there's plenty of room there for upgrades and modifications, and I'm sure as time goes by on Thingiverse and sites like that, you'll find lots of modifications for the printer. I already have tons of modifications I've made for this printer that would also apply to the original X3 that you can find on Thingiverse, and I'll leave those in the description below. Two modifications I've done since my last video on this printer are I've designed these corner bracket stiffeners, and they have the Tronxy X3s logo embossed into them. And I designed a couple of brackets that you mount under your bed assembly here. You'll need 4 T-nuts and 4 M4 8mm screws. And you'll print 2 of these off, identical, and you'll mount them up under there, and your electronics box just clamps into place. And then you got a nice spot that holds your electronics box up. You will, however, have to print some leg extensions to fit your electronics box underneath, but I do find it is a handy feature. If I want to do maintenance on a printer, if I want to turn the printer around and work on something on the back, I don't have to worry about picking the box up and moving it around too. It's all one unit now. And it's easy to remove the box if I need to get into it. I just spread the clamps open a little bit and it falls out. So if you're somebody willing to invest some time into this printer, then it might be the printer for you, because you do get a lot of print area for the price. To pick it up for $300 or less online, and you can get really good quality prints out of it. Let's go take a look at some time lapses of some of these prints I did, and then we'll come back and we'll take a few close-up looks and we'll see what kind of quality we can get. But I was really impressed by the quality of the prints once I got through the horrendous bed leveling ordeal.
Can you hear Valhalla call? Will you dine there tonight? Take this fleet that we sailed here upon and set it all alight. Burn the ships and watch them all sink down. Well, there's no voyage home, there's no turning round. So as you look into your enemy's eyes, know you won't choice left. Fight or die. Feel the frenzy in your bones as the charge draws near. Blood and steel are all we know. The time for glory is here. Burn the ships and watch them all sink down. There's no voyage home, there's no turning round. 'cause I've been through this before. I can taste it in the air, and it leaves me wanting more. You crossed me once, it's left a bitter taste, and now you push me, I will tear you down. If you're man enough to fight, then you're man enough to fall. What are you gonna do with your back against the wall? You played the game so far, now come and claim your prize. There's no escaping this time. You think you know it all. Talk will only take you so far before you have to prove it. This time I'll watch you lose it. You're out of line and out of time. Just walk away while you still have your pride. If you're man enough to fight, then you're man enough to fall. What are you gonna do with your back against the wall? You played the game so far, now come and claim your prize. There's no escaping this time. I will watch you fall. I will watch you If you're man enough to fight, then you're man enough to fall. What are you gonna do with your back against the wall? You played the game so far, now come and claim your prize. There's no...
This turned out awesome. 2 kittens asleep on a pillow. Just waiting for the bed to cool down. Right now, it's stuck pretty good, see? On that mirror, no glue or anything. But once that bed cools down to room temperature, this will pop right off. Okay, now that we've sped through those, let's take a look at some of our prints here. So the first one I did was just a simple vase. It's just one wall thick, 0.4 millimeter, 0.2 millimeter layer height, and it was pretty quick. It took about 7 hours. It's fairly tall. It stands just over 15 inches, and I was pretty happy with how it turned out. There's no gaps or splits in it, and pretty nice centerpiece. The second print I did was a more complicated vase. And I do have issues with this vase, but it's not the printer itself. I only printed this vase 2 wall layers thick, so it's a 0.8 millimeter thick and 0.2 millimeter layer height. I thought the detail was pretty amazing on it. I do have some ghosting here and there, but I have no zits or blobs, no layer shift. I do have spots on the vase where you can see through because I chose to only do two-layer wall thickness on this. Other than that, the vase printed out perfect. I did have supports here and here. They're easy to remove, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Maybe in the future I'll do one a lot thicker than this, and it can be a nice centerpiece on the table. The next print I did after that is a character from Overwatch. Her name escapes me at the moment. It's not a game I play, but I thought she turned out pretty good. I didn't really do a lot of post-processing work on her. I only removed the supports. That's all I've done, and she still needs a little bit of cleanup. There is a little bit of ghosting in areas, but other than that, I find she turned out just perfect. I'm pretty happy with this model, and she stands at just over 15 inches tall. She took quite a bit of time to print, quite a few supports, but she turned out great. My next print after that on the printer was this Iron Man statue. I added the A for Avengers just to give him a platform to stand on. Again, there's a minor ghosting. I didn't do any post-processing work on this as well. I just removed the supports that were here and underneath and under his arm. But he turned out great as well, and with a little bit of post-processing work, he'll look flawless. So I'm pretty happy with this print as well. My next print on the printer I don't have here right now. It was two kittens on a pillow. I had some pink filament and I wanted to go through that. I couldn't figure out what to do with it, so I thought I'd do two kittens on a pillow. The print turned out amazing. I'm happy with it. There was no ghosting. I gave it to my sweet little old granny as a gift, but I was pretty happy with that print. Now, the next print I went to do was a birdhouse, and I had a fail. And the fail wasn't really the printer, it was mostly on my part. And what happened is I set this up to print, and a day later I came back and I'm printing up here in the air, and what happened was my Teflon tube popped out. I'm not sure why it popped out. It didn't pop out for any of my first 5 prints, but it did pop out here. So I had a lot of filament out here spinning around. So anyways, that's what caused this print to fail. I have another print that I did after this I don't have up here. It was a disaster, but I had to change the nozzle. My nozzle got clogged after this print, and I didn't tighten it down enough, and what happened is we had some leakage, so I had little blobs coming out during the print, and the nozzle would hit those blobs and would cause a layer shift. So I had a massive number of layer shifts there. Again, not an issue with the printer, mostly an issue with user interaction, I guess you could call it. My next attempt at that treehouse, however, turned out amazing. I got very, very minor ghosting here. There were no supports needed for this. The printer printed out all the overhangs flawlessly thanks to my hot end modification there, and I'm really happy with how this print turned out. 3/4 of a roll of filament, mount in the back. It's got massive amount of detail in it, and I'm really impressed with it. So this printer is capable of really epic prints. The only issue I had when it came to printing was leveling the bed for each print. It's a little frustrating, and it's time consuming, and I'm not used to that. I'm used to just being able to pop the micro SD card in, go down, set my temperatures, print, go. I'm spoiled is all it is, I guess. That's what I'm used to. But with this printer, I had to level the bed for every print. But that said, I still got amazing prints. Like, I don't think anybody can argue with me that these prints are amazing prints. They're flawless as far as I'm concerned. I had a slightly weird issue with this one with, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but every 3 inches precisely I had a weird banding line in there. It's not a layer shift or anything, it's just a weird color differentiation. I'm not sure if that's the filament or the printer. I'm thinking it might be the filament itself because I haven't had this issue in any of my other prints. So that's most likely an issue with my filament there. We have this benchy, and it's the large benchy, which comes out about this big, but I downsized it. It's got the holes in the chimney. It's got a few extra features on it. I did have an issue here. I don't know if this is supposed to be in the model. It looks like a layer shift right there, but I don't see it shifting anywhere else. I don't see anywhere else shifting on it, so I'm not sure what these 2 little ridges are. But the bridging was good on it. I don't have any real issues. The smokestack is perfectly circular. So as far as I'm concerned, it passed the benchy test. I just have these few weird bridges in the front. So those are my results on this printer, the Tronxy X3s. Again, I get amazing results. It just means a little bit of extra time has to be invested into the printer itself when it comes to your initial startup for each print. So if you're somebody that's okay with that, this printer is a pretty good deal for the price you're going to get it at. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll put links to all these models in my description, as well as all my modifications and upgrades. I'll even put a link to the MOSFET that I installed inside the printer, and a link to where you can pick this printer up. Please note it is an affiliate link, and I have to do those if I want them to keep sending me printers for review. So thanks everybody for watching. I hope this was informative, and I'll see you guys all next time.